Hello, listeners. Today I have the pleasure of speaking with founder and CEO of Encore Search Partners, Jeremy Jenson. He is a subject matter expert on the entrepreneurial operating system and prides himself on building Houston's largest privately held executive search firm. In this episode, we talk about how to let go of risk to propel yourself even more success, how to retain or not retain talent during a shift in how you want to operate and the culture of your organization, and how to build a brand and then leverage that to create basically the mindset that you are the GOAT, the greatest of all time in your industry. So I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I did. What does it truly mean to be a leader? Welcome to The Executive, a podcast that highlights the career journeys, struggles, successes, and day-to-day experiences of leaders. I'm your host, Dr. Benjamin Ritter, bringing over 10 years of experience as a leadership and career coach, L&D consultant, and healthcare executive. My mission is to guide leaders towards creating a career they can love. Thank you for listening. Now let's hear from the executive. Jeremy, you have been on the list of the fastest 50 companies in Houston for the past 5 years in a row. Are you just constantly drinking energy drinks over there, or what are you doing?
Absolutely, man. I'm on a skyrocket trajectory, and I'll tell you, the fuel for the growth was a divorce in 2019. So now I could be the most risk-tolerant person in the city of Houston.
I'm going to put a little disclaimer to everyone listening. If you are happily married and you're struggling in business, the solution may not be getting divorced. So take that advice with a little asterisk.
Wholeheartedly agree with you. My ex-wife is actually one of my very best friends, and talk to her every single day.
So what do you mean by that? That the divorce kind of propelled you and gave you that fuel?
Yeah. So, my ex-wife is, she was the salutatorian of her class at Georgia Tech. She's got a dual major in chemical and biomedical engineering. She is a Southern Baptist from Savannah, Georgia, whose father was a retired command sergeant major in the Army, and her mother is a registered nurse. And so you talk about one of the most practical, fiscally responsible individuals that you will ever meet, right? An incredible mother to my kids. But whenever it comes to investing in people, whenever it comes to investing in technology, real estate, a $2.5 million lease, she always just had an aversion for big ticket items. And even though the bank account was growing and growing and growing and growing over the years, it almost seemed like she just wanted to take the money and put it underneath the mattress.
So I think I'm filling in the end of the story already. So you let go a little bit of the risk, and then what happened? Or the risk aversion, I should say.
Yeah, so let go of the risk aversion, right? Handed her a cashier's check on the day that the divorce was final for $1.93 million. And when I woke up the next morning, I didn't have any real emotion tied to it, right? I'd still had 3 healthy children, had a company that was extremely profitable, had a good reputation in the industry. My brand was continuing to grow. My clients were continuing to give us jobs. And then I realized that I didn't really have this emotional attachment to money. What I was really addicted to, Dr. Ritter, was I wanted to win. I wanted to be the best. I wanted to close deals, right? And whenever I had clarity around what my why was in business, that's whenever I could really accelerate and invest in the marketing, the systems, the technology, and ultimately the people in order to help me scale.
You run basically one of the largest executive search firms, and sales, I imagine, right? Foundation of, every business, but your business, as you just kind of shared, wanting to close deals. I guess, how is that different from the mindset that you had kind of in the beginning stages?
Yeah. And, I could say that, it's kind of evolved even in the last, 12 to 18 months, even, how it's evolved from 5 years ago until today. Right. But, I think the thing that shifted was really establishing, credibility, trust, rapport with my audience, right? So we don't have business development officers in the organization. Okay. So, I'm very active on social media, whether it's LinkedIn or even Instagram, and creating an environment where creating a culture that people want to come work. But on LinkedIn specifically, a social following of individuals that know that we're subject matter experts in poaching from the competition, right? And so, what the mind shift was changing from what I would consider somewhat of a staffing firm where we're kind of taking the client's order, but evolving a little bit more into that advisor for our clients, right? And only onboarding clients that were willing to really, take our advice, our subject matter expertise, our knowledge of the market, and our suggestions on who they should solicit, who they should hire, why they should hire them, and really started to get somewhat picky on walking away from the clients that were a little bit rigid, clients that had realistic expectations with regards to the quality of the people that they were trying to secure, or even compensation ranges. And so, just gaining clarity around who our A client was and really being very intentional about marketing to them and ultimately onboarding them as clients.
Kind of sounds a little bit like the Challenger sale. I don't know if you've read that book or not, but highly recommend it to our audience if what Jeremy is saying resonates. So how do you then shift you might have had to do this, maybe not, but shift the mindset of your employees to take on this new perspective of operating?
Yeah, that's a great question. Truth be told, I've got two individuals that have been with the company for 8+ years now. One is my division president that's over our largest practice area. His name is Casey Knight. That practice area has got about 22 professionals, generates about $9 million in revenue. And, Casey's just had to keep an open mind with regards to, where we were evolving into, why we were kind of evolving there. We operate on EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System. And so we meet as an executive team every single quarter, and we identify some of the challenges that we're facing. We discuss potential solutions, and then we actually implement a solution, whether it's a person, a process, or a system, right? And so really it was like, encouraging that growth mindset, constantly discussing challenges that we're facing, and then, being open to change, right? And so Casey's been here 8 years. Scott Kelly's been here 8 years. He's the president of the company, total non-revenue producer. He's over finance, HR, IT, operations. But Scott is that EOS integrator, right? He's the one that holds myself accountable as the visionary to make sure that I am saying what I'm going to do to the entire team and even my audience on social media. But more importantly, holding me accountable to doing what I say that I'm going to do, right? And so having those checks and balances, the layers of accountability, and so those two individuals have been at the organization for 8+ years. And truth be told, that the individuals that were on the team 5 years ago have really just turned over, Ben. They're not on the bus anymore. I was at a conference the other day, and one of the individuals was actually one of the speakers, and he was talking about how turnover was a bad thing. And I raised my hand, and I actually disagree. I'm of the opinion that turnover is one of the best things for any organization, especially a rapidly growing professional services organization, because whenever we lose someone, right, obviously we've got all of the tools, systems, resources, ideas, the SOPs, all the relationships that they generated as a corporation. We've got that. But then when we backfill that person, it's typically someone that's got a fresh perspective, right? New ideas, new relationships that they can bring in the door. And so every single time I've lost someone, we've been able to top grade them. And it's literally without fail.
Yeah, positive turnover. We talk about that a lot when we work with organizations that are looking at metrics on how to actually evaluate like talent development programs. I'm like, well, let's look at retention. And I go, well, hold on a second. Like we have to segment retention then, because like based on your goals, like, well, what do you do if people that you don't like there leave? Because oftentimes in organizations that aren't performing, you have a lot of actively disengaged individuals that are actually hurting performance, that are poison to the organization. And when you're trying to do something new in a company, there's going to be a segment that isn't ready to do that or isn't capable of doing that. And, how did you identify those people, or did they kind of self-select? I'd love to learn a little bit more about that portion or that phase.
Yeah. So, obviously it's not really just a phase, right? It's constantly evolving as we raise our standards, right? As we bring in new individuals that come from a stronger pedigree, stronger work ethic, right? A higher ceiling, then it makes it very easy to see the individuals that have been here 2 years, 3 years that just really aren't even able to compete with the individuals that have been here 3 or 4 months, right? And so because we only have 40 employees, it's impossible to hide, right? We're also all in office, right? And so nothing is getting lost in translation with regards to how somebody carries themselves, the code of conduct in which they do so, right? Their timeliness, right? Their punctuality, how they speak publicly in front of the organization, right? And so one of my clients used a word the other day, and I thought it was hilarious because I'd never heard it before, but he says, I need someone with the gas factor, right? And when I asked him what that was, he said, gas, give a shit. And so what we found is that, of course, we've got the quarterly performance reviews where we identify as someone meets expectations, exceeds expectations. We do a good job of creating roles in the organization for individuals that are underemployed, that are outperforming the job that they're in. We also openly talk about what an A player is, the qualities that they have, right? And we present, that information to the team. And then also one of my buddies that's in YPO, the Young Presidents Organization, showed me a slide of some information that he took at a conference where they talked about how there's 2 different ways to run a company, right? There's the way that you run it kind of like a family, right? Where there's this hierarchy and there's trust and there's, camaraderie and things of that nature. But on the other slide, there was a different way of running it like it's a sports team. And so we have a tremendous amount of transparency with our team members, right? Who are all paid best in class, who are all expected to hit very, very strict performance metrics. We tell them, hey, look, guys, just because you've been the running back for the last 7 years doesn't mean you're guaranteed that running back slot. We're going to hand the ball off to somebody that gives us the highest probability to score touchdowns, right? And when you have that kind of performance mindset, then it really breeds work ethic, competitive drive, right? Gratitude, resilience, excellence, all the components that lead to what an A player is at Encore Search Partners. And it's really just the transparency around, this is how we run the company. These are the standards in which we expect. And it's up to you guys to drown if in fact you don't want to put in the work in order to hit those KPIs.
Everything you're saying is just resonates so much. Like you're on this sports team, let's say you're selected for the pros, like everyone gets some cool gear, like you probably get some benefits, but like the stars, maybe they get on the Wheaties box, if that's still a thing.
Yeah.
They get special placement, there's like benefits to that, but it's not a guarantee. And if you're just there kind of on the bench, like, and that's your role and you have certain expectations, but you still have to meet like the general expectations of the team. If not, you get traded or you get let go.
Absolutely.
And yeah, unlike a sports team, I mean, I guess they could buy you out, right? If they don't like you or want you anymore, sell you to another team. But unlike a sports team, you could just get fired. Like it doesn't.
Yeah. And there's no emotional attachment in doing so, right? When we have to bring in that running back that used to be the leading scorer on the team, but now he doesn't even get the ball anymore, it doesn't become, an unfair conversation, right? The person that came in that was bigger, stronger, faster, is now the elite performer, right? And that's kind of like the big four culture, right? Where it's an up or out mentality. If I accept mediocrity at the associate level and you have an inability to self-generate your own clients, then you are taking up a roster spot of somebody that can come in and evolve into an elite performer. It's cost prohibitive for me to accept mediocrity.
And athletes on sports teams feel valued because they probably like the competition, they like playing the game, and they're treated with some semblance of respect and recognition from, I imagine, the coach, the trainers, and the players. I guess, how do you, in a culture that's it sounds like very clear on what's expected, create that recognition or that camaraderie and that trust to ensure that they want to stay there?
That's a great question. Of our 40 employees, 27 of them are revenue producers, 13 of them are corporate overhead, right? And so when you look at that ratio, I would say that we provide more corporate infrastructure for a company our size than any other firm. We've got marketing, lead generation, technology, data hygienists, right? People that are focused on turning a 500K revenue generator into an 800K generator, right? So we provide best-in-class resources in order for these individuals to leverage their technical acumen and their business acumen in order to close deals. That's first and foremost. But then also we pay them a tremendous amount, right? We reward them financially upfront whenever we get, the candidate place. I don't need to wait a year to pay them their commission whenever the candidate guarantee expires, right? A lot of my competitors do that. And I just think that that's unfair. If I've collected the upfront money, then why should I hold on to it for a year, right? There have been situations where, maybe a recruiter placed a candidate, but another recruiter submitted that candidate to a different company 6 months ago, right? Rather than making them split the commission and them both feeling like they got slighted in some way, sometimes the corporate office, pays them both the full commission in order to make sure that they feel that they didn't get screwed over and the company's got their back, right? Now, those are obviously very rare circumstances, but doing the right thing in order to make sure that they're in the right frame of mind in order to perform at a very high level is important.
That's really interesting. To say, like, we have these rules, but if that rule is going to ruin, like, our relationship, what can we do to keep you happy that still makes sense based on the circumstances?
Absolutely. I'll give you another example of something that happened. This was a few years ago, but I think it was critically important to the trust and rapport that I've established with my leadership team. There was a gentleman that had worked in the organization for 3 years. For whatever reason, there were some behavioral issues that had surfaced towards the end there. So we decided to part ways. And in our, employment agreements, we have, very strict rules on what you're eligible for commission for. Has the start date already been generated? Did you present this candidate inside of 12 months before your departure? Well, there was a deal that had moved about 11 months after the recruiter had worked here. And so by rule, I was not responsible or entitled or required to pay that individual his commission. But whenever it came in, it was such a sizable fee. It was about $83,000. And it just didn't sit right with me that this guy had been a loyal employee for 3 years and we had decided to mutually part ways. And just because this one deal wasn't on his pending deal sheet, that I was going to fuck him over for $20,000. So I called the gentleman who was a former employee 11 months ago. And I said, hey, Mike, guess what? XYZ candidate moved. Where do you want me to send the check? You got $21,250. Obviously, for this individual that really moved the needle for him financially, especially where he was in that season of life. But the amount of trust and rapport that created with that division vice president, who is 100% qualified to leave and go start a competing firm with me today, right? By doing that, it showed him I don't ever have to worry about Jeremy messing with my money. Because even if it's outside of the bounds of what I'm legally obligated to do, Jeremy's always just going to do what's right. And that bought a lot of equity with that individual.
Yeah, I imagine less or more so than just Jeremy will always do what's right. It's I need to respect and care about Jeremy.
I mean, could be.
Like
yeah.
Well, maybe not. But generally, the law of reciprocation is if you do something for someone, you're more likely to have a little bit of credit in their account.
Certainly.
I think he earned a lot with that.
Yeah, that gentleman in particular. And you know what? It's one thing. Maybe it's being an individual who really cares about my own personal brand. I've got a big social following on LinkedIn, a big social following on Instagram. There's the old saying that it could take you, 20 years to build a reputation, but it could take you 5 minutes to destroy it, right? And what I've found is I don't need disgruntled employees out there running the streets, right? Former players that were cut, right? I don't need that. I'd rather do what's right. I'd rather be clear, set very clear expectations, and unfortunately, when time has run its course, and they're no longer elite performers, I want them to say favorable things about the company, right? We invested in their growth. We invested in their skills development, right? In their communication ability, their technical acumen, their business acumen. We made them better humans for the workforce, right? That's who we invest in.
Okay, I want to shift for a second over because you brought up your brand a couple times, and I work with a ton of executives who have never posted on LinkedIn, who have never leveraged the power of networking, and have just kind of lived in their little career zone and path for their career. And you've broken out of that. You've built a following, you've leveraged social media networks. It's like, what was the motivation of that initially?
I think that the motivation at first was, all my target customers are on LinkedIn, right? So I need to make sure that my face and my voice is heard, right? And I started producing content in 2010, right? And so, in order to create an organic following, there's a couple of different ways to do it. I chose to use marketing automation tools, to be quite honest, right? So, obviously as a recruiting firm, we have jobs posted. We've got people that apply for the jobs. And so I had some parameters in there that essentially said, hey, if you're a director, a VP, or a C-level executive inside of this region with these states and or area codes, right? I want those individuals to get an automated message from myself whenever they apply for a job with our firm. So it might have said something to the extent of, hi, Benjamin, thank you for your interest in the CFO, opportunity with our client in Waxahachie, Texas, right? As you can imagine, we get hundreds of applications for each job requisition, right? If you're a fit for our client's needs, one of our recruiters will reach out to you. This is the recruiter that it's assigned to. Here's his face, right? Here's his LinkedIn profile. In the meantime, I'd love for you to request to connect with me on LinkedIn, and I'll be happy to accept and maintain touch. Please reach out if I can support you with anything at all, right? And so I had literally hundreds of these automated messages go out to individuals over the last, 15 years. And so it's building this massive organic following. And as long as I'm consistent with my posting and I'm authentic and I'm actually telling real stories of what's going on in my business, learning experiences, right? Not only sharing wins, but sharing failure, then people started to develop a relationship with my persona, right? And so then you fast forward 2016, 2017, 2018, I'm walking into conferences and people are saying, hey, it's Jeremy Jenson. I follow you on LinkedIn, man. I love your content. In 2018, we developed a campaign that was a fully integrated campaign through video, through print media, and through email marketing. And the whole campaign was hire the goat to find your unicorn. And so then people started referring to me and my personal brand as being the GOAT in my industry. And if you look on LinkedIn, I've got a little goat emoji next to my name. And so in Houston, Texas, it's funny that everybody in my industry, they say, oh man, you work for the GOAT, right? And it's literally a self-proclaimed moniker that I utilize, that I literally engineered myself. But it took trust, rapport, and credibility through consistent content marketing.
Every single executive that's listening to this right now or individual on that career path, that is the power of branding. That is the power of defining how you want to be perceived in the market, integrating some sort of marketing strategy, either to grow your business or grow yourself. I mean, and look what it's become, over 43,000 connections on LinkedIn, a massive growing organization. That is just priceless.
The cool thing about LinkedIn, right, is you can go out and pay a spammer to go get a bunch of, profiles in India to follow you, right? But it's really the hyper focus around the geo markets, the level of decision maker, right? And people that already had some type of engagement with my company logo, right? Because they applied for it. And so it's important to make sure that your audience is real. I think in an age of AI and paying for likes or followers, I think that it's important to be authentic and true to yourself.
I would agree to that, because if you just have a bunch of fake followers on LinkedIn, where's the money going to come from? So it doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
Absolutely. But it's funny because I had a CFO of a Fortune 100 company direct message me this morning. And, I'd reached out to her for something and she replied, hey, I'm not interested. However, Jeremy, I really love your post from a couple of weeks ago about your vulnerability and talking about your children, right? And, I think the post was referencing like, me going to a leadership development conference hosted by Petra Coaching, which is probably a competitor. You can delete that out. But they really helped me discover what my why was. And it wasn't the houses, the cars, the boats, right? It was my children and the legacy that I was going to create for generations to come, not the money in the bank, right? And so having the vulnerability to post something that maybe traditionally would go on Facebook, but guess what? That post went viral, and I've got a very powerful CFO that's saying, hey, I resonate with that. Even more so than you bragging about placing a director of finance of one of my competitors, right? And so it's important to like showcase your true authentic self, because at the end of the day, that personal brand, when you look at my industry, executive search, recruiting, direct hire recruitment, in a way, we're somewhat commodities, right? We all kind of generally charge the same fees. We all use the same tools and resources, LinkedIn Recruiter, Zoom Info, HubSpot. It's a matter of doing business with somebody that you have trust and respect for, that has established credibility in their specific vertical. And that's the importance of utilizing a personal brand. And the good thing is I carry around that same methodology and build brands around our people as well, right? It's not just myself, because we all have focused audiences in very niche markets.
Yeah, I love how you brought up kind of what people are looking for from that social media brand as well. You're building trust, you're building consistency, you're building a relationship without even having to actually build the relationship with any specific individual. Now today when people buy, they have a lot of information on the market. Like you said, most people have some kind of price segment, like high, middle, or low, but they're really buying you. And so how do you create a you in the marketplace, even if you're not looking to start your own company, because your brand will sell you to the next company you're trying to work for?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Keep you top of mind with your colleagues as well, right? LinkedIn rewards with their algorithm people that produce content and engage, right? And so, if it's a resource that you haven't used for the last 8 years since you've created a profile, Guess what? When you do post and say, hey, I'm looking for an opportunity, I'm a VP of supply chain for a tools distributor in Tulsa, Oklahoma, guess what? You might only get 130 views if it's not a resource that you regularly log into.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, Jeremy, I want to respect your time. Thank you so much for being with us today. If our audience wants to learn more about you, where should they go?
Absolutely. So my name is Jeremy Jenson. I own a 40-person direct hire recruiting firm called Encore Search Partners. We're headquartered in Houston, Texas, but we recruit professionals nationwide. And when I say professionals, it's really 100K plus salaries. Okay. Our average fee is about 60K. And so the average person that we recruit is about 240,000 in salary. But with that being said, if you are a professional that works in some type of a technical field, right? And you would like to confidentially explore your career options, please shoot me a LinkedIn invitation or direct message me. I'll get you in touch with the recruiter on my team that is a focused niche expert in your vertical, whether it's being a wealth advisor, an attorney, an investment banker, a corporate executive, right? Somebody in private equity or venture capital. These are all verticals where human capital is critically important to a firm's growth and success. Those are the areas that we play. Okay. Shoot me a LinkedIn invite and I'll be happy to put you in touch.
So beautiful about that invitation is it's just value add to every single person that's looking for that next step. So listen up, everyone. Reach out to Jeremy. If you're interested in any sort of career development and movements, make a connection. Either way, just send a connection request to him on LinkedIn. He has some pretty incredible content. Thank you for listening to the Executive Podcast, where we explore what it truly means to be a leader. If you've taken one thing away, make sure to subscribe, share, and most importantly, leave a review. Thanks again, everyone, and see you next time.